Hey, what's up? John Sonmez here, and today we are going to be continuing our series on Seneca's letters to Lucilius. We are on letter 15. If you haven't been following along so far, but this interests you, make sure that you go and check out the playlist here. It'll be in the description below as well, and it's going to have all of the letters. We're going to be doing like 100 of these. I forget exactly how many there are. So the other thing you want to do is make sure you click the subscribe button and click the bell to get the notifications so you get all of these letters. Basically, I'm going to be reading them, breaking them down, giving some commentary from my own opinion on these letters. Sometimes they're a little bit hard to understand, so I'm going to try and break this down and make this simple for you. So, number 15 here is called On Brawn and Brains, and it starts off verse 1. The old Romans had a custom which survived even into my lifetime. They would add the opening words of a letter. If you are well, it is well, I also am well. Persons like ourselves would do well to say, if you are studying philosophy, it is well. For this is just what being well means. Without philosophy, the mind is sickly, and the body too. Though it may be very powerful, it is strong only as that of a madman or a lunatic is strong. So what he's saying here is basically, he's obviously very bent on philosophy and thinks that this is the best thing that you can be doing with your life. It doesn't mean that you necessarily have to study quote philosophy as the academics would have you today, but it means that it's introspection, it's observing the world, right? Philosophy at this time is looking at things and making judgments. It's pondering the world, it's pondering your own consciousness, it's pondering your own existence, it's figuring out how things work. That's really important. That is what being well is. And if you're not examining your own psychology and improving it and developing yourself, you're not really well. You might appear to be well from the outside, but you're not really well. Number 2, this then is the sort of health you should primarily cultivate. The other kind of health comes second and will involve little effort. If you wish to be well physically, it is indeed foolish, my dear Lucilius, and very unsuitable for a cultivated man to work hard over developing the muscles and broadening the shoulders and strengthening the lungs. For although your heavy feeding produce good results and your sinews grow solid, you can never be a match either in strength or in weight for a first-class bull. You can lift weights and you get strong and gain some muscles, but no matter how strong you're gonna get, a bull can still take you out. Like, you're never gonna be as strong as a bull or even anywhere close to that. So what is the point? Like, what is the fucking point? And it's interesting, it's something definitely to consider, okay? Besides, by overloading the body with food, you strangle the soul and render it less active. Accordingly, limit the flesh as much as possible and allow free play to the spirit. So, there's some wise advice here. And sometimes when I'm in the gym lifting weights, I sometimes question, like, why am I doing this, right? And, I'll admit a lot of it is for an aesthetic reason, but a lot of it is also for the discipline that forcing myself to go through this, going through the pain, going through the struggle, forcing myself to develop myself physically. I think that Seneca maybe doesn't see that side of it or doesn't talk about that side of it here, but he's got some valid points, right? Is that, essentially like developing the mind, the spirit, philosophy, that self-development is way more important than the physical development of the body, right? Especially since it doesn't matter, right? It's like, yeah, you can get as strong as you want, but you're not going to be any match for a bull, right? As he said. Number 3, many inconveniences beset those who devote themselves to such pursuits. In the first place, they have their exercises at which they must work and waste their life force and render it less fit to bear a strain on the severer studies. Second, their keen edge is dulled by heavy eating. Besides, they must take orders from slaves of the vilest stamp, men who alternate between the oil flask and the flagon, whose day passes satisfactorily, if they have got up a good perspiration and quaffed, to make good what they have lost in sweat. Huge draughts of liquor, which will sink deeper because of their fasting, drinking, and sweating. It is the life of a dyspeptic. There's part of me that says, hey, yeah, you're right, Seneca. Maybe I shouldn't be doing any of this shit. I should just, I'm wasting my time in the gym and running and doing kickboxing and all this stuff. But at the same time, there's a part of me too that considers that says, well, you know what? This is what you feel like you're you're driven to do, and it makes sense. It develops your discipline, right? You feel good about yourself doing this, so there's some benefit and value in it. Number 4, now there are short and simple exercises which tire the body rapidly and so save our time, and time is something of which we ought to keep strict account. Very true. These exercises are running, brandishing weights, and jumping. High jumping or broad jumping, or the kind which I may call the priest's dance, or in sliding terms, the clothes cleaner's jump. Select for practice any one of these, and you will find it plain and easy. So, hey, here we go. So Seneca's saying, okay, here's some exercises that save you time. Just run, or use weights and jump. Pretty good. Pretty, for back then. Yeah, that it still applies today, right? Number 5, but whatever you do, come back soon from body to mind. The mind must be exercised both day and night, for it is nourished by moderate labor, and this form of exercise need not be hampered by cold or hot weather, or even by old age. Cultivate that good which improves with the years. So again, he's stressing less so on the idea that you don't need to physically develop yourself, but more so on the idea that what's more important is to mentally develop yourself. This is why the stress on philosophy. He's saying here, focus on the thing that's going to be good even when you're older. That's going to develop with time, whereas obviously your body's going to decline over time. So all the work that you're putting into developing your physique, getting in shape and whatnot, yeah, maybe it'll make you live a little longer, maybe it'll make you more healthy, although it's kind of questionable. But he's saying that is sort of a waste in comparison to developing the mind. The mind, you need to exercise all the time. The mind, it doesn't matter what the conditions are. If you age, if it's hot, if it's cold, you can still exercise and grow your mind. 6, of course, I do not command you to be always bending over your books and your writing materials. The mind must have a change, but a change of such a kind that is not unnerved, but merely unbent. Writing in a litter shakes up the body and does not interfere with study. One may read, dictate, converse, or listen to another, nor does walking prevent any of these things. So he's saying here that, I'm saying develop your mind, but it doesn't mean that you just keep your head in a book all the time. You can do some other things. You need some change, right? But there's some things that you can do that you can do together, right? He's saying basically you can walk and converse and think about things, so walking is a good exercise to do. You need not scorn voice culture, but I forbid you to practice raising and lowering your voice by scales and specific annotations. What if you should next propose to take lessons in walking? What if you should next propose to take lessons in walking? If you consult the sort of person whom starvation has taught new tricks, you will have someone to regulate your steps. Watch every mouthful as you eat, and go to such lengths as you yourself, by enduring him and believing in him, have encouraged his effrontery to go, what then? You will ask, is my voice to begin at the outset with shouting and straining the lungs to the utmost? No, the natural thing is that it be aroused to such a pitch by easy stages. Just as persons who are wrangling begin with ordinary conversational tones and then pass to shouting at the top of their lungs. No speaker cries, "Help me, citizens," at the outset of his speech. To clarify a little bit more, he's basically saying this, don't just do some crazy shit. I think at that time, there were some orators who were, practicing all kinds of, antics in order to get attention. So he's saying that, you don't just come out in a speech and say, yo, and start yelling and screaming, "Help me, citizens." Naturally, you're going to raise your voice. You're going to lower your voice. It's going to be natural, which I would agree with. Being real and being genuine is really, really important. Number 8, therefore, whenever your spirit's impulse prompts you, raise a hubbub, now in louder, now in milder tones, according as your voice, as well as your spirit shall suggest to you, when you are moved to such a performance. Then let your voice, when you rein it in and call it back to earth, come down gently, not collapse. It should trail off in tones halfway between high and low, and should not abruptly drop from its raving in the uncouth manner of countrymen. For our purpose is not to give the voice exercise, but to make it give us exercise. Number 9, you see I have relieved you of no slight bother, and I shall throw in a little complimentary present. It is Greek too. Here's a proverb. It is an excellent one. The fool's life is empty of gratitude and full of fears. Its course lies wholly toward the future. Who uttered these words, you say? The same writer whom I mentioned before. And what sort of life do you think is meant by the fool's life? That of Baba and Israel. No, he means our own, for we are plunged by our blind desires into ventures which will harm us, but certainly will never satisfy us. For if we could be satisfied with anything, we should have been satisfied long ago, nor do we reflect how pleasant it is to demand nothing, how noble it is to be contented and not to be dependent upon fortune. So again, going back to one of the central themes of Stoicism, right? He says here in this quote, the fool's life is empty of gratitude and full of fears. Its course lies wholly toward the future. He's saying that, the fool, again, is not contented, has these desires, right, is wanting things from fortune, is depending on fortune and fate to bring good things into life. And so he's worried about the future. But instead, he's saying that, the better way to live your life is to be content, like to have gratitude. It doesn't mean that you don't have any ambition or anything like that, but it just means that you're content. Like you don't have these desires. Like you're more rich by desiring less, right? The rich man is the person who has more than they want, right? And so the thing that you can control is what you want. And if you're dependent on the future, if you're dependent on fate, you're always going to be living in fear. You're always going to be living in want and never going to be satisfied, never going to be fully happy or fulfilled. 10. Therefore, continually remind yourself, Lucilius, how many ambitions you have attained. When you see many ahead of you, think how many are behind. If you would thank the gods and be grateful for your past life, you should contemplate how many men you have outstripped. But what have you to do with the others? You have outstripped yourself. So, and this is a good thing, I think, here is he's saying that, like, look, when you're thinking about the future, instead of thinking about the future and what you're going to do, think about what you've already done. Think about your accomplishments, right? And I think that's a good way to be grateful. And this is something I need a reminder of myself constantly. Sometimes I'm like, wow, John, you've done a lot of things. You wrote a couple of books. I mean, you're a published author. You made millions of dollars, right? Like you did all these things, but you forget about that, right? Because I'm like, what am I doing today? And while I believe that every morning you wake up anew and you don't get to rest on your laurels, at the same time, looking at your past accomplishments and what you've done and where you've come from can give you the gratitude that you need in order to be content and to carry forward without grasping so far into the future. 11. Fix a limit which you will not even desire to pass should you have the power. Wow. So think about that. Fix a limit which you will not even desire to pass should you have the power. This is something interesting to think about. Just this one statement here, right? Could you put a limit? Like, would you put a limit on your wealth and say, I'm not even going to pass, right? I'm not even going to care about passing this, even if I have the power. That's a interesting thing to do. Like, where could you put those limits on your life? At last, then, away with all these treacherous goods. They look better to those who hope for them than to those who have attained them. Some real solid wisdom here. Such truth here, right? These things that you want in life, they look so good to you when you want them, when you hope for them. But once you've attained them, they're not so good. And I can tell you from experience, earning my way and getting all these things that I remember getting my first job and making like $8 an hour and thinking that was awesome, and then getting my first house, and then learning to overcome even non-material goods, like overcome shyness and start talking to girls. And then I remember making my first real money, buying a house, like investing, like publishing my book, like all these things that I eventually achieved and got. And even retiring, even get to the point where, I could run a business, or didn't even have to run a business, where I could just retire and do whatever I wanted, play video games all day if I wanted. And when I was hoping for that, it seemed so much better, so much greater than what it is once you have it. And that's important to remember, is that whatever it is that you're hoping for, when you get it, it's not going to be quite as good. So don't put so much emphasis on the future. If there were anything substantial in them, they would sooner or later satisfy you. As it is, they merely rouse the drinker's thirst. Away with the fripperies, which only serve for show. As to what the future's uncertain lot has in store, why should I demand of fortune that she give, rather than demand of myself that I should not crave? Another good statement here. Why should you be asking fortune to give you something instead of the simpler thing, which is just to demand that you don't crave? Why not that? Well, why pick that one that fortune has to provide you something, that something has to happen in the future, that you have to get something, as opposed to just, how about not want it? And why should I crave? Shall I heap upon my winnings and forget that man's lot is unsubstantial? For what end should I toil? Lo, today is the last. If not, it is near the last. Farewell. So again, what he's saying here kind of ties right back into this whole like developing of the body, which he's somewhat against. Why should you crave for this stuff? Because guess what? He's saying today is the last. When he's saying that, what he's meaning is it's as if today is the last. It's like there's so short is your life at this point. All this shit that you're going to accumulate, all this stuff you're going to strive for and crave for and try to get, it's going to be gone anyway. You're going to be dead. It's going to be over. You're going to lose it. Same thing, like I said, with developing the body. It's like, you're going to get old. You're going to eventually lose that health. So what's the point of this? Whatever happens, happens. Whatever happens with fortune, whatever comes your way, it's great. Everything is gravy, right? That's a better way to live your life. And that's the kind of the Stoic way is to think of things that way, is to not have these desires and so much focus on the future, but to be focused more on the present. All right, so that's all I have for you today. If you have not already subscribed, click that subscribe button below. Click the bell to get notifications so that you will not miss any of the videos. Next letter we'll be doing will be 16, and I will talk to you next time. Take care.